him to do this. We have two really good consultants that are doing our strategic plan for the city of Sebastian. They have previously interviewed the council members individually. They put together a preliminary draft of some stuff, and they presented it to the council at an open meeting a month and a half ago, roughly. It's Dr. Richard Levy and Dr. Joe Savick, and they're actually also doing the strategic plan for the county. So they're hopefully going to be able to make sure that we cover our bases in relation to what the county is also doing when we get in that regard. I was very impressed when I met with them. I've been through this process before in private business, and it's one of those kind of things where sometimes if you can't stand chaos and change, you better just leave the kitchen, because that's what's going to happen when we finally put this together. Just so everybody knows that once this is finalized, everything from all of the purchasing we do to our budgeting process is going to be tied to this plan. Every one of our budget items, starting in the 25-26 budget, is going to have to be tied to a strategic objective and a task. All of our reporting processes are going to be tied to that. It's very important that we get this right, and it's very important that the citizens of the city have an input to this. I don't see a gigantic crowd out here. I was hoping we'd have more people. But we do need a lot of input in this process to make sure that everybody's comfortable that we're moving in the right direction. It's a long time coming. Some of us on the council have been harping for this for 6 to 7 years, and we now have a city manager, I'll give Brian his kudos, who is willing to push it and to help us bring in a consultant and get it done. And we're very happy about that. So I'm going to turn it over to these two gentlemen and let them go through their process, and hopefully you guys will have a lot to say. Don't hold back. Please don't hold back. Negative, positive, whatever you want to say it. I think they're big guys. They can handle it. Okay? So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I want to just first start off by commending and expressing our gratitude to each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy lives and schedules to be here today and participate. And definitely, you're going to be adding value as the city discusses these issues. So we're really grateful to have your participation today. I'm going to go through just kind of like an overview of strategic planning, but it's going to be quick. And then we're going to move right into, hearing your ideas and input and feedback on, mission, vision, values, and goals. So this is today's agenda, real brief, what we'll be covering. So let's talk about, why strategic planning, why is this an important tool in public administration and in helping to ensure the long-term success of a city or a county. Unplanned success is a rare event, right? Long-term success is never a coincidence or accident. And so strategic planning enables us to optimize our opportunities for the future, as well as mitigate any threats or risks for the future also. City of Sebastian utilizes strategic planning. And I like that Drucker quote. How many Drucker fans are there here? Yeah, I figured there'd be a few. One of America's foremost theorists on management and leadership, as you know. And he said, the best change is the change we create, right? We can either be reactive and change is going to happen to us, or we can be proactive and we can identify opportunities and initiate change and realize the best results. So I like he even points out that, it's arguably even less risky to lead change than it is to not do so. I'm sure you've heard this phrase before, fail to plan, plan to fail. And we're going to perform as we plan as an organization. Once again, strategic planning is all about identifying what opportunities there are for the organization or the city or the county, and then optimizing, getting the most out of those opportunities, as well as recognizing any kind of threats or risks on the horizon and what we can do to mitigate or prevent those issues. It fosters alignment, meaning making sure that the organization and the operations match the objectives, that the organization is, that you could walk through the organization and see, feel, and hear what the mission, values, vision, and goals are. You know, because the organization is just completely concentrated and focused on that. It allows you to define the future. You've received a handout, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with these terms from you know, your professional lives and perhaps your academic studies. Mission, vision, values, and goals, right? So what's the mission of an organization? It's the rationale of the organization. Why does this organization exist, right? It's general and it's broad. The vision is, where are we going? What's the destination of the journey, right? Who can we be, right? And what could we achieve as an organization? Values, we know, influence how human beings think, talk, act, and organizations do best when they select, define, embody, and live a specific set of values that are positive and productive for the organization. Goals are broad, long-term purposes, you know, such as we're going to ensure a high level of public safety in our community, right? It's not as concrete, specific, and measurable as objectives, but it gives us a definite target to aim for. So why are we doing this, right? And I mentioned a couple of these benefits. Organizations do a lot better when they have a clear and consistent mission, vision, values, and goals. It's kind of like, you know, how well does it go when you have 24 people rowing very fast and furiously in different directions all at the same time? Not so well, right? And so this is the opportunity to unify the entire organization around a specific mission, vision, values, and goals. It will enable the organization to provide its best performance to citizens. Ultimately, that's what this is all about. Optimizing positive results and ensuring the most effective and efficient performance for citizens and the community. Internally, it fires people up because people come to work every day and they leave every day and they know what they believe in and they know what they're trying to get done and they know they're part of something exciting and they know that they're going to be realizing some really positive results for the citizens they serve. It also helps you attract resources, whether it's federal, state, or non-governmental funding. It's kind of like going to the bank with your business plan. You're a lot more likely to walk out with money when they see a solid, realistic plan that's going to enhance performance and outcomes. Anticipatory government. You know, historically, government in America could be seen as maybe reactive, right? Waiting until something's a problem and then dealing with it. You know, strategic planning allows you to be proactive and future-oriented and anticipate issues and then develop and implement the best plans you can to deal with those issues so that you achieve the best outcomes. Alignment. It's really, really important that everything in the organization matches what we're trying to do, that the organization, the operations, the budget is well matched to what the organization is trying to achieve. And so this is also a budgetary tool, right? The strategic plan helps us allocate our resources. We've decided these things are important. That's important information when developing and implementing and evaluating a budget. And ultimately, as I mentioned, it's all about getting the best results for the citizens you serve. That's really what it's all about. So how would you define strategic planning? Just a succinct definition would be, given our mission, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, stakeholders, history, capacity, resources, what should our mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives be? And then how are we going to achieve them? It's a very research-driven process. We start with research, and I'll key in on that in a moment. That takes us to, mission and vision and goals. We then get more and more defined to more specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound objectives. Then obviously, how are we going to achieve those objectives? What strategies and tactics? We implement, we evaluate. By the way, feel free at any time to ask a question. Very, very open to that. So the plan will enable us to, set a mission for the organization, define the long-term goals, those broadly stated long-term purposes, identify annual objectives, which are, once again, SMART, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. We're going to have detailed action plans to achieve those objectives, right? We're going to align the city's budget, resources, personnel, policies, organization, structure, everything to facilitate success with the goals and objectives that have been selected. And then, of course, this is a really important piece, measuring how did we do? In other words, what was achieved? What was attained, right? What have we learned? Is there something we could improve upon or enhance or do better, right? So I always say, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, kind of an old Drucker statement. This is a really research-driven process. So we've done extensive research on the city and the city government. We did an orientation on strategic planning. You're getting the very briefer version of it right now with the entire council and the city's administrative leadership. We then spent a couple of days doing interviews with your members of your city council and with your administrative leadership, the department directors, to learn their thoughts, perspectives, ideas on mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives. I mean, after all, the council selects them, and then the administrative team has to implement them. So it's a really good starting point to hear, okay, well, what do you think, right? That enabled us to develop, define, prioritize, rank within a survey, an electronic survey that went citywide to get feedback from the entire city workforce on this issue, right? Once again, sequential steps, we're gathering valuable information each time, and we're building on that. We did a strategic planning workshop with the city council, and the city council reviewed all of that research that came back, the interviews, the electronic surveys, and that gave them an opportunity to share their ideas, their input, their perspectives on mission, vision, values, goals. Your council was, from before this process started, really enthusiastic and strongly committed to, we need to be very citizen-oriented on this, and we need to hear a lot from our community, and we need to be engaging with them and listening to them and wanting to know what they think when it comes to mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives. Today, you're participating in one of two community meetings, which is your opportunity to tell us what you think about the mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives. Then taking all of that community input at a later date, there'll be a strategic planning workshop, which obviously you can attend and participate in. And the council will then finalize mission, vision, values, and goals and task the city manager and the entire team to identify objectives that would flow from those goals, as well as implementation plans for each of those objectives. This will eventually result in a draft strategic plan that will undergo review by the city manager, then by the city council. I'm sure they will have ideas and changes and input. And then, you know, once it's approved, then we begin implementing it and evaluating it. And once again, it's all about getting the best possible results for you from your city government. That's what the strategic plan is all about. Real quick, and then Dr. Levy will be taking over. Just to give you an idea, first we did interviews with the city council as well as the administrative leadership, all the different departments. That then enabled us to identify issues to ask about concerning mission, vision, values, goals, and objectives for a city, an electronic survey that all of city government participated in. And we got back a lot of valuable data there in terms of what they rank in order of, as priority, order of importance, what they agree with. So once again, at each stage in the process, we're just trying to collect as much information, data that will be beneficial to developing a plan. And today is absolutely critical because this is all about you. And so we're going to be hearing a lot from you about what to do and what not to do on this. Yes, ma'am. All of them. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we got a very, very high participation rate.
There you go.
Yeah, we got a very high participation rate for the city employees. Yeah.
And then the list of priorities that you created from the survey and the meetings and stuff.
Right.
Is that public?
We're going to talk about that today.
That's exactly what we're talking about
That's
today.
today's meeting.
And in fact, you'll be giving us feedback on all of them today. You'll be telling us.
Today, or will we be able to take them?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Since we're going to be discussing them and you're going to be giving us stuff today, are we going to be able to take it with us and provide feedback by a drop dead date? Because, some of this stuff is very nebulous and out there and not very specific or targeted. And so, that's...
We'd love to get back as much as we could today, but at all stages and throughout the entire process, there are multiple opportunities to provide public input, and so it will always be welcome, right? So probably a lot of people will, and this is Dr. Lee's section, I don't want to step on. Hey, I like this, I don't like this, include this, don't include this. But by all means, if next week you go, hey, I have an idea about that. I'd like to add something to that. Of course, we're going to.
Hi, Brian Roberts. Can you all hear me? Everybody? I'm not used to a microphone, but when you talk about the employees and going back to the lady's question, did you go down to the line staff also, or did you stop at department heads and supervisors?
That's an excellent question. All employees.
Okay.
So we started in the interviews with the elected and the administrative leadership, like department directors, right, and assistant directors. The survey, though, was all employees. And we got a very high response rate, which is really positive because it tells you city employees are fired up about serving you, and they want to find ways to do even more and be even better. And so it was good.
And the answers you received, were they higher than the average from what you've experienced in the past?
They were high. It was a high rate of response. Yes. You have a very engaged city workforce.
That included public school system?
No, I apologize. Only city of Sebastian.
Oh, all right. Okay,
Yeah.
right. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I should make that clear. City of Sebastian.
And other than us in person or coming to the meetings, will there be like an online contact that we can get in touch with you if we have any further questions?
Sure. I'm sure we can set something up, Mr. Benton. It might be you want somebody on your team receiving those as a central kind of collection point. But absolutely, and I want to be very clear, there are multiple points or opportunities for public participation throughout the process. So there'll be workshops that you can come to and say, hey, tell you what, I came to the community meeting, I had a new and different idea, and I'd like to voice it at this workshop. Great. Thank you.
Okay, your city manager just whispered to me there were 124 employees and we got 100 responses. That is a phenomenal return in our experience. That shows us a very engaged workforce that cares about the future of the city, and so we were very impressed. Dr. Saviak used the word alignment a number of times in his presentation. Of course, you can understand the alignment inside a strategic plan, but I want to reiterate another comment he made about our conversations with your elected city council. Every one of your members was pressing for more and more public input into this process. That doesn't happen in every city and county that we work in, where the community is really engaged. And Mayor, I remember the night of your meeting when you were awarding the bid, you spent a little time explaining how you and your council members were going to press for public involvement and community involvement in this process. And so that's another form of alignment, to make sure that there's alignment between the city and its community. That's really important as well. So what I'm going to do today is Dr. Saviak explained the research that we did and the interview processes and the surveys, and what we have today is what we're calling community comment card. And hopefully you picked up one of these. It's a two-sided piece of paper. Hopefully you have a pen, because this is really the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be doing today. And we are taking basically each of these components: mission, vision, values, and goals. So we're gonna start with the mission, and we're gonna ask you about what should be, and you have a page that explains again what the mission is, and Dr. Saviak discussed it, but we want your ideas on the proposed mission. Now, the way this is structured, it's the first section on your front side of your paper. It's the mission, and we're asking you, should the following phrases be included within the potential mission statement of the city? And then please check the appropriate box. And so you can check, I think this should be included in the mission statement, or don't include it if you feel really strongly it shouldn't be included. If you're indifferent, leave it blank. But what we're really after, and again, these are high-level things, as the young lady pointed out. These are high, lofty things, but the plan doesn't work unless you start with the mission, and then the vision, and then the values, and then we get to the goals. So there's a logic to this. And so we really would like you to tell us and tell your council whether any one of these phrases should or should not be included in the mission of the city. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. We'd love for you to fill this out now, if you could. Get into a little bit of back and forth if you have some questions or observations. And then more importantly, we leave a place down below, because while we went through this extensive process of interviews and conducting a survey, and it kind of all boiled down to these 4 items were the ones that were the highest priorities of all the people we spoke with, that doesn't mean this is the entire universe of ideas, right? You may have a completely different idea that should be the mission of the city, and we leave you some time, some space there for you to tell us what you think should be included in the mission of the city if it's not already contained in one of those 4 items on the screen. Is that, everybody got the charge?
So you're looking for one?
If you think more than one should be there, go ahead and include it. If you feel really strongly just about one, say include it. If you feel really strongly that a couple of these shouldn't be involved, shouldn't be included, that's important too. So we're gauging your opinion of these particular items. You can pick one to include, you can pick all 4 to include, you can pick all 4 to not include, but if you do that, I sure would hope to make up your own. Exactly. We would want you to give us some thoughts on what you think should be there.
My last question or statement was made about the public school system, and you corrected me on that, which I understand, which is no problem. But this is all aimed at the city of Sebastian, correct?
Correct.
Is any ever going to interface with IRC?
Well, this is your plan for the city.
Right. But is there anything that's going to, like you said, excuse me, earlier, something that might trip us up? Is there anything that we're going to have to be aware of with the IRC that might hold us back?
I think if we get through the mission, vision, and values, so we understand what you expect from your city government in terms of how it approaches everyday life, we get then to the goals, and the goals of the city may or may not align with the goals of the county, and then individual objectives, sort of specific, smart, time-bound things that the city wants to achieve, those may or may not be consistent with the county. Obviously, if there are things that align with the county, that's better for the city because sometimes you can collaborate to achieve certain objectives. But this is an independent strategic plan, but because we're working with the county and you are within the county, we are aware of what's going on there, and we will look to advise your city, and your city will tell us what are some of the things that they think they can collaborate with on the county. So I think there are opportunities for the two organizations to work together, but this process we're going through, we want you to think about your city independently of the county. Eventually, we'll get to things that the city and county can do together.
Yeah. We very much appreciate that you're thinking in
Yeah,
expansive way, but please focus on your city. Yeah.
Hi, sorry, Karen Hiltz. I know that this is supposed to be big picture right now, but with regards to including or not including, I'm concerned about defining quality public services. What does public services include? Because I'm for limited government, not bigger government. And with regards to foster economic opportunity, this is in large part a retirement community. Not that there aren't people that need jobs, don't get me wrong, but there again, definitions and what's included under those umbrellas I think is very important, and I presume that these will be fleshed out in later meetings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why things are broader.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then when we get to Mr. Benton and his staff, based on your input and the direction from the council, once mission, vision, values, and goals are set, then Mr. Benton and his team go, well, now I've got to operationalize. I've got to put that specific objectives. What does that really mean for us? What does it not mean? And all of that will come back to you also. In other words, you'll have an opportunity to go, well, I don't know about that objective, you know? But that's why today will be exactly what you said, a higher level, and then the staff will be operationalizing specific objectives at a later date. But that also will be a public process.
But I want to pick up on something you said about limited government, which could be embedded in the mission, but it might also be a value, and it might also be a goal. So as you go through this exercise today, I would ask you to think about that, if that's an important feature of your government, and write it in. Tell us that that's important to you, and then we can take that information and incorporate it into our thinking as we move ahead with the plan. Yes, ma'am.
We're very new to Sebastian, and so my concern coming from an area that we had all this planning and stuff, does the taxpayers or the city voters ever get a decision to say they want this for the city, or are all these decisions what just the councilmen and these 100 employees want for the city? So say you decide you want to do this huge, let's say a riverfront revival, and it's going to cost the taxpayers $3 million. Do the taxpayers get to vote on this ever, or is this just the city council that will have the final input on
Mayor,
any
I'm
decisions?
I'm happy to take that. So I'm going to give you this sort of generic answer, and that is we have a representative form of government. You elect city council members to make decisions for you on behalf of the city. Large capital projects, that is a city council decision. Having said that, most councils, and this one in particular, I think often seeks a lot of public input and public opinion about projects like that. I think your city manager was telling me earlier about some workshops where you were discussing the master plans for certain parks. And there was tremendous turnout. And that is the way the elected officials get input on big decisions like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, unless there's some special bond issue, we're going out for debt, or some strange way of financing a project that would require voter approval, those decisions are vested with your elected city council. Mayor, is that a fair?
The strategic plan does not allocate funds. This is not a funding issue. When we're not, within the overall strategic plan, we're not talking about whether we're going to spend $3 million to do something on the riverfront. We're talking about what is the overall direction that the city wants to go, and what are the objectives to meet that direction. This mission defines the high level. This is kind of like looking at this from a 10,000-foot level. What's the overall direction that the city wants to go in? Do we want to have a quality public service? And I probably couldn't define that for you today, but it's got to be broken down into a whole bunch of components as you go through this process, because this is number one. This is like saying it's going to rain today. Now, the next step might be, how much rain are we going to have, or what do I want to do? So it's important to understand that this is a very, very stepwise process. It goes from the top to the bottom. But in no way does this thing decide whether we're going to spend money someplace. That's a budgeting process. And there is ample citizen input into the budgeting process, especially if we can get complete citizen buy-in into the strategic plan, and we bring that into the budgeting process. Then we'll have individual workshops on all these things. Believe me, I don't know anybody in the 5 council members who would want to pledge spending $3 million without having a lot of workshops and getting buy-in from the public to do that. That's not something we really like to do. The representative form of government is great as long as the representatives understand that the people are the ones who put them there, and that they need to have the people involved in it as well. So.
I was at that meeting about the last meeting that you had about the park. And the first thing that was mentioned were the funds that had already been allocated for that project. Had nothing to do with taxpayers or the taxes in Sebastian. So that's completely different than what you're talking about, right? Okay.
So I'll respond to that. I know it doesn't pertain to this, so I'm just going to jump in on this. So the only thing that we had allocated funds for the Riverview Park Master Plan was we had allocated prior to this budgeting cycle, we had allocated $1 million to replace the splash pad because it had reached the end of its life. So that was a project that was specific to the splash pad. Out of the splash pad project became a larger Riverview Park Master Plan project. So that's where, when we had that discussion at the Riverview Park Master Plan, the first public meetings that we had, which we'll have follow-up ones, that's where that initial funding that you're referencing was strictly just for replacement of our splash pad. The splash pad replacement was $1 million that had previously been funded, that we have funded. Yes, correct. Had not been funded at that time. Now, in this fiscal year, we have dollars funded in the future if the plan continues to go forward. I know we have been allocated $1.5 million from a federal grant that we have just recently been allocated. And that is still contingent upon the approval of the Riverview Park Master Plan and the implementation of that master plan. That master plan has not been finalized. We are still in the conceptual design phase with the consultant based on the feedback from the public meetings. That information should be coming out in the next month or so, and we'll have additional public meetings for additional input at that time.
If that project does go through, the federal grant will pay for that, not taxes to Sebastian citizens.
Partially correct. So that federal grant will help subsidize the funding because there is a matching component to the grant. Majority of grants that we get within the city, whether they are state or federal funded, have a matching component. So for instance, if you ask for $1 million, they may ask for a 20% match. So we would have to fund $200,000 as a matching component. So every one of those grants has a matching component to it. And that's why we have to, in the city's budget, allocate funds for the matching component to those grants. So I think that kind of, so the strategic plan is something kind of completely different from that element. But to build off that, once we get our strategic plan in line, then if it is never identified as a goal of the city in our strategic plan to improve quality of life or different elements, improve our park components, if those items are not identified in the strategic plan, then in our budget, we can't fund those park projects because it wouldn't align with our strategic plan. So everything this fiscal year, it's not happening. Next fiscal year, every item in our budget is going to have to align to one of the pillars of our strategic plan. So if that is not a pillar of the strategic plan, however it falls underneath that, then it will not be eligible for funding.
So
Sorry.
I guess I need to apologize because I used that park idea as a way to get citizen input. I didn't realize we were going to go down a path where there's some outstanding issues. So thank you, Brian, for addressing that. Thank you for your questions. But I was really just trying to use that as an example of how citizen input is received for projects like that. So I see people writing, which is great. You know, we want to give you enough time to talk. Any questions about the mission? You know, we heard, how do you define quality public services? I think it's in your mind how you think it should be right now, because we're at that sort of high mission level. But if there are no questions about any of these items and everybody's had a chance to kind of fill out the form, anybody need more time? We'll be around for a while, even after the meeting, and we can talk about other items as well. But what we probably want to do now is move on to the vision of the city. And again, a reminder, that's the destination. That's where we're going. That's what Dr. Saviak told you earlier. And then, so we're very interested in your idea of the vision for Sebastian. And we've, through our process of interviews and surveys, kind of boiled down the 4 highest ranking ideas that came out of that process. Again, doesn't mean that's the only thought or approach to the city's vision, but here we have Sebastian will preserve our hometown vibe and coastal charm. We got that word vibe in there. Make the community vibrant and a desirable place to live, ensure smart, sustainable growth, and promote the beautiful waterfront. You may like all of those. And if you do, check the box to include them. If you think any should absolutely not be included, put don't include. If you're indifferent, just leave it blank. But we really would like to get what you think should be included there. And if none of those appeal to you, once again, below, please give us your thoughts of what you think the vision for the city should be if we've missed this in this process. We good? Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Hi, I'm Diana Bolton. I don't know anyone that would say no to any of these things on this sheet, the way it's worded, and I've done plenty of surveys, and I know wording it, of course, everybody would agree with everything that's on here. But what I find missing and lacking is there's nothing in here about the reason why most of us are here, and that is because of the nature and the environment and conservation. Nowhere in any of this information does it say that. There's none of those words are in here. We're the home of Pelican Island, which is the very first wildlife refuge in the whole nation. The one of beginning of 400 wildlife refuges, that's our marketing. There is nothing in here, not one word about environment or conservation or nature or health, which boils down to health. We're all here, we want to be healthy. Sure. We want to live in a healthy environment, a fitness community, a healthy environment. So somehow I think it's important that we work that into our vision, because most of us are here because this is a healthy town. It's a healthier, safer place to live than other places where we've come from.
So thank you for that comment. I have two responses. One is, if you don't think it's there, you should write it in. And secondly, I think when you get to values, I think you're going to see protecting the natural resources. Now, that may not be all-encompassing to you, and it may not sort of capture the health-related items, but it definitely did come up in our process, and so it was identified as a city value. That doesn't mean it couldn't be elevated to be more important, even to be in the city vision. So please give us, that's perfect kind of feedback that we're looking for.
Thank you, because our health is number one. It doesn't matter how much infrastructure we have, how many employees we have, how big our city grows. It's all here about growth and economic development, but health is number one. Without that, you have nothing. So we really do consider that. Most of us here consider that as a very important thing. And also, I have a question for you guys as consultants. Will you be involved in the town planning? Will you be involved in the actual plan of the town, going forward?
This engagement, no.
I'll let you speak to that.
I'm a trained city planner and geographer. I've been a city planner I used to have a full head of hair. So I've been involved. You have a wonderful community and you have great bones to make it even better.
Yes, we do.
But I think, Brian, you've got a staff and you've got comp plans and you've got things moving in that direction. That's not our assignment, but any plan for your community, this strategic plan will help, because the values of the organization and the community are really embedded in your physical development plan. If you really have an aligned community, then these things we're talking about today kind of make their way into your physical plan. And in Florida, they're comprehensive plans, but so that's just a personal comment for me. But our assignment is not to be involved in the physical plan. We need to understand it, to understand you and understand the community and hear from you, but we're not actively involved in your future plan, physical plan.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean, this is not a land use. Oh, I'm sorry. Just to reinforce, I know this is a very sophisticated audience, but just to reinforce, that's your comprehensive plan. That sets all of your land use and all of the planning for different areas of the city. Strategic plan is articulating, here are the priorities for the city. They could be policies and programs, they could be capital projects, they could be institutional capacity, in other words, enhancing the ability of the organization to successfully serve you. And I realize that, you know, it sounds like, well, government's got this plan, this plan, this plan, but as you know, all the localities right now are going through their comprehensive plan review, and so your land use type issues are addressed by the comprehensive plan as opposed to a strategic plan.
Yes, okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And are you from this area? Are you guys, do you have experience working with cities in Florida or in this area?
We both work with cities. I work with cities in strategic planning and comprehensive planning. So, but yeah, I've been around a while.
And what's your favorite small town that's similar to the size of Sebastian?
How about we talk about that offline, okay? All right.
Yeah, and I'm a Florida native. My family's been in the state for over a century. When my father was a little boy, Miami Beach looked like a rural area with just a few houses and a lot of pasture. And yeah, and really, I'm originally from just right down the road in Fort Lauderdale, you know, so very familiar with this area. Yeah.
Actually, my question is to you. Can you explain how the funding now has to be tied to this plan? How that came about? So we can have an idea of why this has to be.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that that drives the reason why this has to be done this way, but it is historically along the lines of strategic planning that once you get to the end of that, everything you've kind of aligned, your workforce, your projects, all align with the direction from City Council. So without a strategic plan, we know what City Council's direction is, but there's no formal, I call them pillars. So they're going to have 5, 4, some number of that of strategic goals from a City Council level. Then our staff, our director level from each individual department will create goals and objectives that align with the pillars from City Council. Without a strategic plan, we kind of know a general answer of what they want to see happen, but it's not formalized. So it could lead staff, not to say it's happening here, but it could lead departments to implementing projects, asking for funding for projects that don't really align with the goals and objectives of City Council. So this will allow us to know specifically what the goals and objectives of City Council are, so then our departments can align the projects and the capital projects and operational goals that they have to what City Council. So that's where the funding mechanism comes in. If we're going to do a project, say it's a stormwater project, we need to make sure it aligns with the goals and objectives of City Council. Or a park project, perfect example. If City Council does not want to see improvements in our parks, once again, I want to be clear, that's not the case at this time, but if they don't want to see things done in our parks, then we can't align to those pillars, and so therefore we shouldn't fund that project.
Hi, Bob Steven, how much are we paying for this service?
70, what is the contract?
I think the contract is 72,000, 73,000, and we've been along this route for about 6 months now, and we still have a few more months to go in this process. And it did go through a formal RFP or RFQ process, and we had multiple applicants, and we had a selection committee. So just to be transparent, it followed all requirements, and it was not just a sole source or anything of that nature.
Just a quick comment. You know, we're looking at all of these, and we're saying whether we want them or not want them, but the reality is that they're all very subjective. They're written in a way that they can be interpreted however anyone wants. So we may say, yes, we want this based on something that we think is going to happen. But the reality is, based on all of these questions, you're asking for our input and our opinions.
I don't know.
It won't matter.
Here's the good news. Here's the good news answer to that. When you see the specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound objectives, the city will improve, I'm making this up, the city will improve customer service satisfaction by 20% in 24 months. At that point, you'll definitely know exactly what it means or doesn't mean, and it will be measurable and achievable. And so I completely agree with everybody. When you're at a real high level like mission and vision, things do sound rather broad and all-encompassing, and different people in the room might interpret it different ways. But once you work down to your objectives, and you all will see those objectives, you will definitely know specifically what is being done, how it's being done, when it's being done, and what's not being done. So that will provide you with the clarity and the definition and the specificity that you'd like to see, so that you know, well, what does that really mean? Well, that goal was now translated into this specific objective for this capital project or for this program to serve citizens. And at that point, you definitely will know what the definition of it is. Right. Right.
For any input. It'll be done.
Yeah.
Ask the question again.
Okay.
You're doing really well, so keep going.
What I'm saying is that I agree with what you're saying, but by
Right.
the time it gets to the point that you're saying, here's the end result,
Right.
it's too late for our input. You're saying this is what you want our input, so we're going to sign these forms
Right.
based on what you're presenting to us.
Correct.
But by the time we get to the end of this, it's too late for any input from us. So basically what you're saying is the decisions have been made. You know what route you're going in. You just said that. You know where you're going to be. So
Right.
really the reality of this is so that you can get us to say yes to a lot of these things based on really nothing.
Yeah, so here's the answer to that. All of you will know about the objectives. You'll have the opportunity to contact council and staff about, is that a valuable objective? Is it not? Should it be designed and implemented and evaluated differently? So you raise a good point that these tend to be broadly stated, and so different people could interpret them differently. But once you get to the objectives, and what's wonderful about the state of Florida is we do everything here in public. And so when the council begins considering objectives and specific plans for those specific objectives, you will be here. And you will have the opportunity to be up at the microphone and say, you know, I have a better idea on that objective. I think it could be redesigned and done differently. And oh, by the way, on that implementation plan, that's what I did for a career for X amount of years. Can I make a suggestion on how you would best implement it? So you're going to have plenty of input on what actually gets done in the way of policies, programs, capital projects, and enhancing the capacity of the organization to best serve you.
Let me just add, these may all seem like mom and apple pie and like, how could you say no to these? But when we did our electronic survey and we had quantifiable numbers, there was a distinct difference between the top one and the bottom one. Believe it or not, the consensus of the entire pool of people we spoke to, these all didn't rank the same. There were some that were lower than and others that were higher. And so people do think of these things differently.
To her point, because people are interpreting these things differently.
Correct. You're using your value system to interpret that. There's nothing wrong with how you interpret it. Interpret it the way you feel it means to you.
That has nothing to do with your end result.
It's not, first of all, this is not my or ours. This is collectively our effort, right?
If you're going to speak, you got to speak on the microphone.
Okay. The point is that this is so general that you're asking us to say yes to things. This is
Or
great.
no, or no to things.
No, all of this stuff is great. Who doesn't want this, like you said?
Well, there were people who did not want some of these things in the city's mission and vision.
Okay.
And I don't know, there may be people in the room that think some of these things don't belong in the mission. I see heads shaking. So I know on first glance, some people might think that all of these, well, how could you disagree with that? And that may be your perspective, but I think there are people that would have a view of these things.
I'm saying it's not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing. When you ask somebody, are you in favor of fostering economic opportunity in Sebastian? Who would say no to that?
I don't know.
But what is that exactly?
There's some people who raise their hands who just wouldn't.
Okay, but what is that exactly?
Okay, but it's in their interpretation of that. Because
Yes, it is, but what's your interpretation
It's not
of
my
it?
interpretation.
Okay, what's city council's interpretation of that?
So economic development could mean your waterfront. It could mean supporting small businesses.
Well,
It could
what do you mean by that on this piece of paper?
And the purpose of this exercise is to be very high level, not to be that granular. We will get to that granularity when we get to the specific goals and objectives of the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, and so these are, by definition,
Intended.
they're going to be broadly stated. when they are translated into specific programs, policies, capital projects, or enhancing the ability of the organization to best serve you, the objectives, then you'll definitely be able to know what exactly does that mean? Do I agree with it? Do I want it? Could I improve on it? Can I make suggestions on it? And you'll have that opportunity on the objectives. But if you look at any organization in America, public, private, or nonprofit, by definition, the mission and the vision are going to be more broadly stated and more general in nature. And then when you work your way down to goals and then specific objectives and implementation plans, then things get real specific. But you'll have the opportunity when things get real specific to also be real specific and say, that's not a good objective. I would change that objective. Here's how you could improve that objective. Does that make sense? So you're not locking yourself into any specific decisions on policies, programs, capital projects, or organizational changes with approval of, with giving input on mission, vision, values, and goals. That'll be at the stage when we are discussing specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound objectives.
We had it up there.
Yeah, I think we had the entire process laid out. I apologize.
Comes, I think, right, drafting the plans, the implementation plans, there's
Right, so
public
what will
input.
happen is the city manager then will go, we've gotten direction from, we've heard from council, and the council said, well, we want to go to the community. They were adamant about that. Then we have community output and input. The council then may change some of these things, right? Or keep them the same, depending on what the input is that we're getting. At that point then, once we know mission, vision, values, and goals, Mr. Benton then tasks his team with what are the specific objectives and action plans to make those things happen. And that will be done at a workshop. And so you'll have that opportunity at the workshop and go, I agree with that objective, I don't agree with that objective, I think we can make that objective better, I would change it this way. So just by the very nature of the process, whether you're in corporate America or you're in a local government, this is going to be the higher level stuff that you're right, that probably everyone in the room goes, well, who's against protecting the environment, right? But then when we get to how are we specifically doing it with the objectives and implementation plans, you're going to be here for that too.
When is that?
Oh.
So we're still, as far as an element, it'll be in the next few months. No, it will be in the next few months. Yes. I can't give you a specific date at this time. But after this meeting, we will then go back, we'll review the input from the public. We'll go back to City Council, provide them with that data as well. Once that happens, then we'll start that process. So within the next couple months. Because I've been instructed by City Council to have this strategic plan in motion, ready to go when we start our budget process in February next year. So.
Good, it was an excellent question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an excellent answer.
Yeah.
Okay, questions, comments, observations on the vision task we've asked you to help us with? Okay. Move on to values. Again, these are the principles, standards, how we think, talk, and behave as an organization, as a community. What are the important values to you? And we tested 15 of them, perhaps. These are the top 5 that came through: public transparency, professionalism, protecting natural resources, preserving coastal charm, and innovative initiatives. You may think none of these should be values of your strategic plan or values of your city reflected in the strategic plan. You may think all of them are. or you may think that there are others that should be incorporated. And so we provide you an opportunity on this form to tell us whether you think they should be included, not included, or what other values do you think are really important that should be included, and we provide you a space to include that information to us. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Diana again. Real brief, and this is a question everybody will appreciate. Do we have some time to put some thought into this and return it to you with a little more information?
Yeah,
So let me answer this real quick. I'm sorry to jump in.
No, you should.
But we have, I'll go ahead and give you the information now because I know it came up earlier, if you can email us. We have created an email address specifically to gather information regarding our strategic plan. The email address is strategic planning, so ING on the end, strategic planning @cityofsebastian.org. So any communication you want to have with strategic planning can go to that email address, and that will be specific to this process. So you can provide input after this meeting, and it will go, we'll make sure that our consultants get that information, and we'll also share it. Obviously, it's all public record, so, but that is the email address, strategicplanning@cityofsebastian.org.
Brian, it may be helpful to set sort of a closing date, maybe in a couple of weeks or something, where we can make sure we haven't, you've given sufficient time. We just want to get everybody's thoughts and be able to start tabulating information. And if something trickles in a month or two from now, we want to make sure it's included.
Yeah, correct. So I would say, give yourselves, I would say 2 weeks. If it's after that, then obviously we can try to continue to share the information, but 2 weeks to ensure it's included before we come back to City Council.
Is that enough time?
Because we want to make sure that we continue to move this process along. If I take longer than 2 weeks, it's just going to delay us coming back to City Council for the next opportunity. Yes, I'm going to write it down on this whiteboard up here, and so you all can have it afterwards, but it's strategic planning @cityofsebastian.org.
Okay, now that we've got 2 weeks, we don't have to ensure that everybody fills something out. I know people are doing a lot of writing, and you may or may not drop it off today. That's okay. But moving on to the last ask we have of you today is helping us identify your support or non-support for the broad long-term purposes of the city, the goals. And we provide, again, there were a number of them. These were the 5 top-ranked ones from our research and interview process. First one, support smart, sustainable growth. Second, preserve the hometown feel and coastal charm. There's that coastal charm concept again. Encourage economic development. I realize that means different things to different people. But as Dr. Saviak pointed out, that will get defined specifically by the objectives and the specific plans of the city. Improve organizational efficiencies and ensure a high level of public safety for the community as the broad long-term goals of the city. So while conservation that word isn't there, you may feel like it's embedded in those, and if you don't, you should tell us that you think conservation should be specifically, sure. Yeah. No, that's the kind of feedback and input we're looking for. Questions, comments on the goals? So, when we're coming in the room, we thought we might get the completion of these forms. We've obviously learned that more time is desired, so we're great with that. If you feel comfortable and you want to drop it off today, that's great. If you want more time, please take it. But I think if you could get it back to us within 2 weeks from today, get it back to the city via email, that would be wonderful. And we are going to tabulate this information like we did on our previous work, and we'll be able to then have your input into this process, and we will be providing that to City Council.
And there's no need to rush out. I mean, our next community meeting is not until 6 p.m.
Right.
So if you want to stay seated.
You want to talk to us? Yeah.
Work on these, please go right ahead.
That completes our discussion today, and we really appreciate your attendance and look forward to your input. Well, if you are going to leave your form, please hand it. You got one. This gentleman in the blue shirt in the back will be taking those from you. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Excellent.